Welcome to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. I'm Bernie Flowers, one of Uncle Sam's wayward sons. I'm here to sort through the chaos and keep it real for America. So, if you're into protecting freedom and correcting bad government policy, if you're into making sure that our nation stays on track, I ask that you hit the like, share, and subscribe button. Now, let's dive in. Our buddy, Mr. Broderick Thomas, is with us today. He's a returning champion to the show. And Brodrick just released a book called 5 Questions for America from the Mind of a Black Conservative. I'm excited about the book. I've read it, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought you might enjoy hearing about the book. So, Brodrick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
Man, I'm always pleased to talk to you, and I enjoy our conversations, and I'm thankful that you take the time to come and visit with us again. Because let's see, this is your what, second or third time?
I want to say maybe my third time on. Yeah.
Man, people enjoy you. So, with that said, tell us about the book.
Okay. Well, again, Bernie, thanks for having me. Like you, I always enjoy our conversations, and so I'm very appreciative when you give me the opportunity to be able to talk about some things that are on my mind. And I don't know how many people it's important to what's on my mind, but I like to talk a lot, so I figure, hey, we'll put it out there anyway. So yeah, I last summer I started. I woke up in the middle of the morning, and as I often do, and couldn't sleep. And so when I start thinking about stuff, I will often like just type things in my phone. And so we were gearing up for the back end of the election out in Alexandria. And as I was looking at the presidential election, I just started thinking about some things like, there's some things that need to be fixed in our country, and I'm wondering why no one is addressing that. And so one of the things I've always been teased about is that whenever I'm in a conversation, particularly a group conversation, if someone else is talking, for whatever reason, Bernie, I revert back to my old elementary days, and I'll raise my hand, right? and I do that for the purpose of I don't like to interrupt people when they're speaking. And so if there's something that I have to interject, I want to let them know I have something to say when you have a moment to stop talking. And so I do that. And they always ask me, why are you raising your hand? I'm saying, because I got a question, as I often do. I have a lot of questions. So the name of this book is 5 Questions for America from the Mind of a Black Conservative. And I was just laying up one morning, and I was wondering why some things are the way they are in our country. And as I started to type down these questions, a few days later, I put them on a Word document, and then I started adding some insight to them. And so I saw this kind of taking a form of its own. And I felt like some of these questions are things we need to be having conversations about at our dinner tables, conversations about in our town halls, conversations about in our Congress, and at the highest levels of our government. And so I put these things together and decided to put this book out. It's a very short read. Someone sit down with it, they probably can complete it in less than 2 hours. But it's just a few questions, and it was something that I just wanted to provoke some thought behind and kind of get some conversations going in our country to see if there are some things that we can begin to do better. I know we can't fix it all, but just to have the chance to start to talk about some of these things and see if we can go in a more positive direction.
I like it. Well, brother, I got a few questions for you, and those questions come from the book. And I was just excited when I got a chance to read them because clearly we think alike. So, with that said, why is the right to life? Why does it matter?
So yeah, in the book, I specifically talked about the question was, why is one of the most prevalent conversations in our country whether we should or should not be able to kill unborn babies? And I'll tell you, my editor wanted to change that language a little bit, and I said no, I want it to be that way. I want to talk about if we're killing babies, if we're ending lives, then I want that to be the question. And one of the things that I get into is the right to life and the value of it to us as a country. But the other part of it, Bernie, is that I feel like there's a certain responsibility for us to protect our most vulnerable citizens. right? We protect our elderly, we protect our children. As a nation, I think that's the sentiment that we have. And so the most vulnerable citizens in this country to me would be the unborn child that does not have a voice to speak for themselves. They didn't do anything to be created to come into this world. Um, so I think that at the conscience of our nation, that should be a conversation that we talk about. Um, but to that end, my biggest question in the book was, why is this conversation the biggest thing that we talk about? So, I work on campaigns and things of that nature. And even at the level of local campaigns, we see that in the conversation, in the debate, that abortion issue comes up the most. And so I was looking at a young lady that was running for city council and as a Republican. And so she was getting battered. I mean, battered about the abortion issue. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, this young lady, if she were on city council, she'll never have a vote or a voice in anything to do with abortion. That's done at a national, at a federal level, at the least at a state level. Um, but people were making their decisions about whether or not to vote for this young lady, not based on if she could do the job, but how she felt about abortion. And so that was my question. Like, why is this the biggest thing that we talk about? You know, um, abortion matters. It's a big deal, but whether or not someone can do a job on city council or in a general assembly should not be how we determine, how we're voting for people. And so that's why that kind of came up. Because yes, it is a big issue. We do need to deal with it. It affects our country. We're talking about the vulnerability of babies that, like again, they don't have the right to speak for themselves. And particularly in the Black community, we have more Black women that have abortions more than anybody else in this country. You get states like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, even here in the DC area, Black women account for more than 60% of abortions in this country. So it's a topic that we all need to talk about, but it doesn't need to be at the forefront of every conversation we have about our government.
To me, it's genocide because we simply are not replacing ourselves in a manner that's going to maintain our society. And it's not just a Black issue, it's a national issue. And I am glad that you were addressing it. So,
Yeah,
I,
I mean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, for the Black community, if you look at between abortion, Black on Black crime, and incarceration, we're destroying ourselves,
We
you
sure
know?
are.
So,
So, next question.
okay.
Why is our government sending forth so much foreign aid and bringing in non-citizens and paying for their needs when they could be supporting native-born Americans of all colors?
Absolutely. That honestly, Bernie, that's a good question. Again, when I wrote this book, my questions were earnest. I was not intending to answer them. I just wanted to put forth the questions out there. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why our government cares more about citizens from other countries than it does of its own. Um,
Absolutely crazy.
when we look at, most recently $18 billion going to Israel over the last year or so, as of last May, the count to Ukraine was over $175 billion. When we look at those things and then look at the status of our own people here in our nation, having problems paying rent and paying for gas and groceries and things of that nature, I don't know how we can justify sending that money outside of our doors. So my answer to you is I don't have one, but I think we should talk about it. I think as a people, we should be in a position to hold our government accountable for the very dollars that we give them through our taxes of what they're doing with it, because it doesn't balance out for me.
Totally understand. Totally understand. And again, I'm glad that you were brave enough to address these things because these are questions that thinking people should be thinking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next question. Why should sexuality be a private matter?
Bernie, I hear my mama's voice when you ask me that question. My mama would say, because I said so.
Oh, that's it. So,
Because I said so. I don't think we do enough for that anymore these days. But um, Just because it should. I mean, a person's sexual preferences should not be, in my opinion, should not be a matter of public debate. Um, what you like to do, who you like to do it with, that's your business inside of your home. The problem I have with it, and I don't care what anyone chooses to do in their own home, in their own bedroom. The problem I have with it is when it becomes a government debate or a government issue to the sense of starting to create protective classes, if you will, right? And that's scary to me because for for 400 years you've had black people that have been on this plight to be a protected class and get equal rights and all these kinds of things. We're seeing other communities come into our country and get them at a much quicker rate than what we have ever been entitled to. But outside of the race piece of that, I think that when you start just making classes protected for any reason, such as sexual preference, I think we're headed down a slippery slope because you open the door for a lot of other things. So if we start creating protective classes based on sexual preference, then what is and I know this sounds bad, but I just want to ask the question: what is to prevent down the road someone from saying, well, I want to be a protected class because I enjoy or my sexual preference is to have sex with 13-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls. And if that's my preference and we're protecting classes based on sexual preference, what is to stop that floodgate from opening? And so that scares me because I think there's a much deeper agenda when we're talking about that. So again, your sexual preference should just be your business, but it should not be in the hands of the government to be able to start protecting classes based on that.
And to caveat what you just said, what about the rights of that 10-year-old girl?
Exactly.
I got a little story I'd love to, tell you if you don't mind. I
Sure.
was passing through Chicago O'Hare Airport once, and there was a father, black father, with his little girl. She looked to be about 7 years old. And apparently he was traveling alone with her, and she had to go to the bathroom. And I'm in the bathroom, and there is probably 20 guys in there. And when she and they walked in together, and the look of fear on this little girl's face. Now, it was almost like she was in a combat zone. And nobody should have to feel that sense of fear because she was just afraid and she saw these big, scary men. Now, imagine if there was a man in there with a dress and a beard, she would be totally confused and her innocence would be taken away. And I can imagine some other things, but I'm not going to mention them on the podcast. But the issue of the day is somebody needs to protect our children. Their
Yeah.
innocence is valuable. So again, I'm thankful that you brought that question up. So I got another question for you.
Well, but just to close that up, so that whole thing about keeping your sexuality private is once you release that, that's what opens that door that to be able to protect that little girl.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So next question.
Okay.
Why are so many Black Americans dependent on the government? And how does that affect the day-to-day sovereignty of Americans in general?
Man, that's a loaded question because there's a lot to pack into that.
Oh, yeah.
So you go back to the ending of slavery and uh, blacks were free, but they weren't given any tools or resources to be able to start a new life as free black people. And that perpetuates itself for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And so then when we get into the 1960s and you're dealing with civil rights and all of those kinds of things, and we start to get the welfare programs and all of that, um, because blacks were in an underserving position anyway, they needed that help just to be able to get close to an even footing, which you and I both know was not even close. Um, but with that being said, that created a perpetual sense of dependency on our government. And I'll dare say that also ties into why we have a huge amount of, to the tune of about 85%, a huge amount of our voting bloc in the Black community, 85% vote Democratic because they're always given that dependency. Here's my problem with that. And I'm going to borrow this from a gentleman. He's from the Nation of Islam, and forgive me that I can't call his name right away, but he's one of the higher up speakers in the Nation of Islam. But he put out some numbers, and what he said was this: there are about 50 million Black Americans in this country, and we attribute for about $1.6 trillion that flows through our community in revenue and income. And he said, with that number, that makes us the sixth richest nation on the planet based on the income that flows through our hands. And I thought that was interesting. And he goes on to talk about it some more. But I mean, those numbers themselves, he said that makes us a larger country than Spain and Mexico. And both of them have land masses, governments, militaries, all of those types of things with less money than we as Black Americans do. And so to that end, um, we can't just sit around with those types of resources and wait for somebody else to do that for us. And so you and I but belong to an online community called Black Brick Society. And one of the things in that is to begin to prepare Black business owners to not only be leaders in business, but leaders in our community and allow us to begin to take equity in our country. But I think we've just had, so my overall answer for that is that we've had a long period in history of dependency on our government based upon how we started in this country. And now we need to find a place to be able to begin our own resolve to take equity and be responsible for ourselves in this country, because we literally could be our own country right now and be doing very well. But there's a sense within our community that we don't have the unity to be able to come together and make that happen.
Absolutely. Totally understand. And like you said, I would like to see a lot more business owners, a lot more entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. And that's a huge number. You said how many trillion?
$1.6 trillion flow through the hands of approximately 50 million Black Americans inside of the United States.
That is amazing. You know, one of my dear Jewish friends, when I was in Texas, he told me once that a dollar will pass through five Jewish hands before it leaves the Jewish community. And as Black Americans, we don't do that. We don't do that at all. But
We're lucky if it hits more than one.
there you go. There you go. So I got another question for you, and this
Okay.
is more economic as well. Can reparations empower Blacks economically? You know, I wasn't going to let that go.
Ah, um, yeah, I have a theory behind that, and again, as well as I do, being a Black conservative, our views and opinions are generally outside of the box to those that are around us and close with us. Um, but I feel like if I could get to President Trump and put a bug in his ear, I would give a plan that would set for reparations to Black Americans, specifically American descendants of slavery, ADOS.
I like that.
So the Black Americans. And here's my thing, and I'm gonna do the high level thing of this, Bernie. I think that our government could give every ADOS, American descendant of slavery, Black American, $100,000 in reparations, and still cost less than what we spent on um, the checks that we got for COVID. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that can be done. Most people that I talk to in the space think that number is way too low. They feel that each American deserves, $1.5 million or something like that or whatever. Okay, so we're going to take 50 million people and give them $1.5 million. First of all, that tab is almost insurmountable. It puts us back in the place to start. creating, making money again, printing money, which kind of gets us into this place from before. Um, but second of all, the purpose of reparations at the end of slavery was to give an individual and their families the resources that they need to get started with a new life. It wasn't designed to make them rich. It was just, hey, you're going to be on your own now. You've worked on these lands for X amount of time. Here's enough for you to get started, go off, get your own land, start to grow your own food, that type of thing. Not designed to make them rich. And so for me, the average Black American, if they were to receive a tax-free lump sum amount of $100,000, what does that do for you and your family? Right? You might can start your own business. You can invest in some things, start a new career, things like that. Buy a new home, but to get you and your family started, I think personally think that $100,000 would be a reasonable amount of money, and that number could vary, around about. I'm being very generic when I talk about that. But I think when people are asking for, $1.5 million, $2 million in reparations, at that point, I think you're just being greedy. You want to win the lottery, and reparations weren't intended to be that,
Yeah.
right? So I believe that would be a good start. And when I speak to the payment of reparations, I do believe that slavery has left a stain on on America's history. I'm not the first person to say that. I've heard it plenty of times. And until America as a whole makes reparations, not just the financial ones, but makes reparations, admit to the injustice that was done to the Black community or their descendants. Um, and then begin to address that. That's where we start to kind of make things right. You know,
The you said something earlier, American descendants of slavery. Did I get that right?
yes, ADOS, ADOS.
That is a huge, huge, huge concept because there's a lot of people who are black who did not their ancestors did not experience slavery, and
Yeah.
so there's a huge difference here, and so I'm glad to see you bring that up. But anyway, with that said, you have a whole lot to say, and I want to give you an opportunity to just freelance. Right now is your turn to say whatever you will to the audience, good sir. So now the audience is yours.
Oh man, well, thank you for that. I mean, we've touched on a lot, and again, I don't want to give away everything that's in the book, but to me, I think as American citizens, we have to take back our level of participation in our government. Right now, it looks like we have a government that is dictating to us how we should live, the way that we should be able to do things. And that wasn't the way it was originally set up. The government was supposed to be able to protect our rights to be independent, to be free, and to be able to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, right? Um, so I ask these questions because when we don't participate, when we don't step up to the plate, when we don't make mandates of the people that are supposed to be representing us, then that is when we lose our authority. That is when we lose our power within our very own country that is supposed to be for us. Um, we are seeing, well, we have seen over the past 4 years a large migration of immigrants from other countries coming in that are. It was funny when when now President Trump used the term "black jobs." It looks like the Black community, as well as other communities, went irate with that. But there is, in fact, such a thing, and you and I have had this conversation, based on your history. It's not a negative connotation to speak on that, but even if we don't say Black jobs, how about this? Black opportunities, right?
I like
Opportunities
it.
that the Black community can have a chance to access, to unlock, and to be able to make our lives better for ourselves and our families. Because at the end of the day, that's what each and every one of us want, right? I just want to be able to live my life the way I want to, hopefully, be comfortable, be pleasant, and make sure my family's taken care of. So that's why some of these issues have to be discussed because I'm telling you, the day someone calls me and tells me my granddaughter was in that situation you were talking about in a bathroom where some male, whatever his age range was, did something to make her uncomfortable or feel unsafe, you got a way bigger problem than me writing books. Okay.
We
I'm
think so much alike.
I'm just being honest. That's going to be the least of your issues is something I said on a podcast. So, we want our families to be okay and we want to be able to live a good and happy life. And so the government is supposed to be a facilitator of that, not an inhibitor of that, right? And when we start to see their policies and laws that kind of just invade our life, I see so much overreach, overstepping of our government into our individual lives. And so, again, I put this book out there because I feel like everything starts with an idea, with a conversation. And a lot of these things are things that we, don't really talk about. One of the chapters in the book talks about, sexual orientation and gender identity, right? Uh, Newly President Trump came out and said there will be two genders in this country. I am in full support of that, right? Full support of it. Either your genitalia is going to tell you one or the other, and anything else is not biological. So it's just so many things that we are at now that I feel like there has to be a change and it has to come from the people and not the politicians. In order to do that, we need to raise up leaders that'll have serious conversations at the table to be able to make some real changes. So, if you have the opportunity, grab my book, just read through it. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert on these subject matters. Um, for me, they are genuine questions, things that I have like, why is this way? And I encourage people to have those conversations. And if you want to have it with me, one of the things I started doing is I had some groups in my network that they ordered, books as a group. So they ordered 5 or 6 books or whatever, and I offered to get on a Zoom call with them and have an authors meeting to discuss some of the things if they like. I leave that open to people. If you order my book and you have a club or a group that you'd like to discuss, and I mean a real discussion, not just being negative about everything that you read, but a real discussion about it. I'm happy to be able to do those things. But if you get a chance to order the book, please, read it and let us know what you think and what your thoughts are on some of these questions. But hopefully it provokes you to pick up the phone and call your congressman or your senator, write them a letter, send them an email, whatever method of communication. But start talking about some of these issues so that we, the people, can begin to live our life in this country the way it was meant to be.
Broderick, how can people reach you if they need to?
My email is always the best way to catch me. It's Broderick, Broderick, at the number three, followed by the letters X as in X-ray, G as in George, Enterprises. So it's Broderick at 3XG Enterprises, which 3XG Enterprises is the name of my company. So you can always reach me there. I'm very quick to respond to email. I have it with me all the time. And anyone who wants to have some good dialogue, have some conversations, or if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. I try to be very accessible.
And how can people buy the book? How can they access it?
On Amazon is the easiest way to get to it. There are some other platforms that are a little lesser known, but Amazon is where everybody goes. So if you go on Amazon and type in the title, 5 questions for America from the mind of a Black conservative, it'll pop up. You can order the ebook through Kindle, or you can order the paperback book. Some of my family members ordered the book the day we released it, and they got it in as little as 2 days. So if they ordered it on Monday, they had the book on Wednesday. So ironically, I don't have any. So I had to go and because I ordered an author's order. So I ordered 50 books for myself to be able to hand out promotions, things like that. But my order is taking about 2 weeks. But however, my niece and my wife got a copy of the book in like 2 days.
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't know how that works. But anyway, I'm waiting on my own copy to be able to see it in paperback. But I do have it in the ebook. And I mean, again, I wrote it, so I have it on my laptop too.
Well, I got the Kindle version and I listened to it, so it was pretty doggone cool. And I was really happy with that. And, like I said, we think so much alike. So, with
Yes.
that said, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come onto the program. We're friends, we're buddies, we share philosophies, and you're doing great things. And I can't wait to have you back on the program for whatever endeavor you might be doing next.
Absolutely. I always got my hands in something, but it's always interesting to talk with you. For your audience that don't know, you and I at least chat 2 or 3 times a week, and it's an easy thing for us to talk for an hour, hour and a half, just because we get into these things. And I love it when I get to hear you say, "You called me to get me all riled up." That's when the conversations are really good. So
Man, you are absolutely awesome. And again, I'm just congratulating you on your book and all the wonderful things you're doing and all the things that we expect to see from you in the future. So, again, Broderick, thanks for coming onto the program, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
same to you, Bernie. Thank you for having me.
Amen. Well, that's about it for now. This has been the Loyal Opposition Podcast, produced in association with Fallback Productions and Veterans for America First. Please like, share, and subscribe as we try to grow the channel and protect America's middle class. Be sure to get your copy of my book, Black Values Matter, available as an ebook on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books. And also, remember, it's okay to disagree. But if we want our country to prosper, we must insist on unity, transparency, and civility for ourselves and for our fellow citizens. Thanks for listening to the Loyal Opposition Podcast. We'll see you next week.